So today we're going to take a little bit of movement, very small movements, moving the hands, moving the head to work with the breath. So somatic movement and breath can be incredibly helpful to slow the breath down, but we also know that it supports our parasympathetic nervous system. So that rest and digest side, the side that helps us heal, to feel good, to digest, just to feel overall good, well and great. And bringing a little bit of movement in can be really helpful. So if you are lying down, for those lying down, just making sure that your head is level with your heart. That's really, really important. So making sure that if you find you've got POTS or a bit of dizziness, if you have been suffering with long COVID, you might even find that you want to be propped up at a bit more of an angle, and you'll know what feels comfortable for you. We want to try and ensure that our lower back and our deeper abdominal muscles feel free. So our diaphragm is free to move with the breath. So that might mean having a little bit of support under your knees, or perhaps even having your feet flat on the surface you're lying on and your knees bent. And I'll just briefly demonstrate that for those who are new into class. So it might be your knees are bent like this, or it might be that you have a cushion or a pillow under your knees if you're lying flat. I'm going to guide this seated, as I mentioned. So for those of us that are coming to a seated shape, making sure you feel comfortable. You might be seated on a sofa, on a chair. I like this position, seated on the floor. If you are seated on the floor or on a surface of some sort, and you're coming to cross-legged or maybe even kneeling, just checking in that your hips are level with your knees, if not higher. So I know with that position, my knees are higher, and if my knees are higher, my diaphragm doesn't have the freedom to move down, so that's going to restrict my breath. So that's partly why I have my knees on the floor like this. Just some extra height under your glutes or sitting bones can be really helpful so that your hips are a little bit higher. So it might be you're sitting on a few books or folded blankets, whatever feels reachable. Back of a sofa, one of the big parts of the cushions at the back of the sofa can be helpful as well. But making sure that you have the freedom there for your diaphragm to move. You might like to take a moment to roll your shoulders if you're seated up. If you're lying down, perhaps just a simple shrug of the shoulders up and down towards your ears, releasing a little bit of tension and taking a moment to settle into your shape. And as always, if you need to move, please do. If you need to change position, please do. If at any point the breath doesn't feel right, take a pause, you can come back to it or find a different breathing technique that's working for you today, making sure you're being guided by your body. You might like to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And as we always do in the breathe class together, taking a moment to release through the jaw. So we can hold quite a lot of tension in our jaw. So that could be opening your mouth wide and sticking your tongue out. There's a bit of a gurning action that I sometimes do. It's almost like a cow chewing, rotating the jaw. That's a possibility as well. And another option could be pushing your tongue into one cheek, moving it around a little bit, and then pushing your tongue around the upper lip, over to the other cheek, and in behind the lower lip. So stretching out of the lower facial muscles. Taking a moment here to settle. Sometimes sitting in stillness can be a little bit of a challenge, so knowing that you're really welcome to move a little bit if that's helpful. Sealing your lips and breathing in and out through your nose. And we know breathing in and out through our nose is the healthiest option. The blood vessels warming our breath, ready for our lungs. The hairs in the nose, filtering our breath. We've got pockets of nitric oxide in our nose, so that's an antimicrobial, antibacterial gas. So breathing in through our nose, cleansing our breath. But you may recognise from experience, if you breathe in through your nose, it's a much slower breath than if you take a breath in through the mouth. It's going to help slow our breath down and work with our oxygen and carbon dioxide ratios. If, however, there's a need to take a mouth breath at some point, if your body's asking for that, Try not to push through it. That sense of perhaps sitting with it for a moment, but if it feels overwhelming, taking the mouth breath your body's asking for. It's not wrong to mouth breathe. We mouth breathe when we're talking perhaps, when we're eating, when we're doing different things, when we have a blocked nose. And when you're ready to come back to a nasal breath, coming back. So, no enduring or endurance in our breathe class. Taking these few moments here to begin with, noticing how your breath feels as it travels in and out through your nostrils. Not attaching any judgment or criticism to your breath or how it is today, just this noticing, tuning into our conscious breath. And then maybe you begin to encourage your breath to travel low. So perhaps that's already happening, perhaps you're already tuning into that. If it's helpful, you could use a hand to guide your breath down low, so the lowest part of the rib cage, top of the abdomen area, often known as the solar plexus. It could be one hand, it could be two. If you're seated and you're using the hands to guide your breath, the closer your elbows are into the body, the less work your arms have to do, so that can feel a bit more restful. So this possibility of your inhalation reaching the lowest lobes of your lungs, the lowest parts of your lungs. And if it's not coming with ease today, knowing that's okay, just perhaps inviting a little bit of patience. And then maybe you add on the deeper sensation. So your rib cage expanding out as you inhale and gently contracting as you exhale. So we're still breathing low, but then beginning to really feel your rib cage expand with each inhalation. And once again, you could use the hands to guide the rib cage if that's helpful. Sometimes bringing our sense of touch into our breath work can be really helpful to guide the breath. It might be that your thumbs can sit at the back of your body and your fingers at the front. Resting your arms as soon as they begin to feel tired or fatigued. And here we're looking for a movement in the ribs that is 360 degrees. So it's at the front, the side and the back of the body. And this is the key movement to ensure our diaphragm is working well. This muscle that sits just at the base of the rib cage. Our breathing muscle that should be doing majority of the work. Working and exercising our diaphragm by expanding and consciously expanding our rib cage as we inhale. And consciously watching it shrink back as we exhale. So beginning to find our breath travelling low and travelling deep. And if you find these two elements are coming with a sense of ease, they're flowing well, I'd like to invite you to begin to slow your breath down a little more. Not working with any counting in any way, unless you find that particularly helpful. A sense of hardly any air passing in and out through your nostrils. So breathing in and out so slowly that it feels as if there's no air flowing in and out. And it's this in particular that can bring on a sense of air hunger, that need to take a deeper breath or perhaps a mouth breath. And for as long as it's not creating any stress in your body or anxiety, you may be able to sit with that feeling for a little bit. But as soon as your body begins to find tensing or tightness or just uncertainty, pause and come back to it when you're ready. So always nurturing the low and the deep breath, and then working on slowing the breath down in your own time, at your own pace. If you find that your mind is busy, it's wandering off, sometimes sitting with our breath can feel a little bit more uncomfortable. Perhaps you take your gaze to something in the room you're practicing on. So finding a focus point can be really helpful. You might like to check in with your jaw area. A sense of softness in the jaw. And your facial muscles across your forehead. And also in your shoulders. So an awareness of any tension or tightness creeping in. And at this point, I'd like to invite you, if you are working with that slow inhalation and exhalation, that sense of the breath travelling in and out, really slowly, as if no air is passing in and out through the nostrils, to let that element go. Come back to simply focusing on the breath travelling down low and travelling deep. We'll begin to take a little bit of movement through the head and neck. So you might like just to try this once or twice. Perhaps you continue with it. We're going to begin to turn the head towards the right hand side. So if you're lying down, you can just gently turn your head towards the right as well. And then we're going to turn our head towards the left. So taking this movement just to see how it feels, really slowly, very gently. And then if possible, beginning to integrate your breath. So we're breathing in as we turn our head towards the right. And then breathing out as we turn our head towards the left. And I'd like you to be guided by your own rhythm. So is it possible to make your inhalation and exhalation work with each movement? To be as long as it's a slow motion movement of the head. Working alongside your breath. If this feels uncomfortable in any way, letting it go, coming back to the slow, deep, low inhalation and exhalation. And as you begin to find your rhythm, is anything changing in the breath? Is there any noticeable changes to your breath? Maybe the texture of the breath, maybe where you can feel your breath moving to. Perhaps this feels slightly easier in slowing your breath down than the last technique we used, where the breath was hardly travelling in and out through the nostrils. And just taking a moment to acknowledge how this feels for you. If you're still taking the movement, you might like to take 2 to 4 more rounds. And then perhaps you transition into a pause. So as you turn your head, there's a momentary pause where you hold your breath. It could be just a millisecond, it could be 1, 2, 3 counts. As long as you feel able to hold it. But as soon as the need for the inhalation or exhalation begins to arise, moving the head and working with your breath again. So we're not looking to hold our breath for a long time, just a simple pause. Again, working with your own rhythm. Ensuring there's no tension or tightness creeping into your body, particularly in the shoulders, jaw, facial muscles. nurturing a smooth movement, smooth breath. You're still practicing the movement with or without the breath holds, taking 2 to 4 more rounds here. Eventually finding your head back to centre. And pausing here for a moment, breathing in and out low and deep. Now we're going to take one more movement, moving our hands. So for those lying down, hands, arms resting beside you. And begin to breathe in with the palms facing up, and then breathing out, the palms facing down. So there's a rotation in the arms, very slow, very gentle. Breathing in, palms are facing up. Breathing out, palms are facing down. Arms fully supported by the surface you're lying on. If you are seated, finding a comfortable position for your hands. So palms are facing up as we breathe in as well, but a sense of your hands resting perhaps on your knees, your thighs. Elbows relatively close in, nothing too tight or strong, but just a sense of the hands resting and the elbows in a restful shape. So if you're seated, we'll be breathing in, the palms facing up, and then breathing out, palms are facing down. So a much smaller movement or range of movement than the head and neck, so you may find you have to really slow down the movement of the hands. But palms facing up towards the sky, a sense of opening up, inviting our inhalation. And then palms facing down, a sense of closing the lungs on the exhalation. So taking your time once again to find your rhythm. You may find your breath has slowed down quite a bit, and it's a bit more of a challenge to slow the movement, or this particular movement with your breath. And taking your time to really begin to slow the hand, the wrist movement down. Maybe you notice changing the breath again, whether that's longer, shorter, slightly different texture to your breath, or perhaps a sense of it moving somewhere else. If it feels as if it's flowing well, with ease, you may like to invite a pause again. So at the end of the inhalation, at the end of the exhalation, taking a short pause. For as long as your body feels comfortable. So we're not trying to do any long holds, just a moment or two. Checking in with your shoulders, your jaw, your facial muscles. And if you are still taking this movement, working with the arms, the hands, taking 2 to 4 more rounds. Eventually finding your way back to stillness. And taking these final moments to notice how your breath feels right now. Just a noticing, kind of watching. Perhaps there's been a dramatic change, perhaps not a lot has changed. Welcoming everything. If your eyes have been closed, you may like to bring your hands together, warming your palms, placing the palms, feeling the warmth on your eyelids. When you're ready, gently opening your eyes, allowing some light to slowly filter back. And releasing your hands when you're ready. So today's practice is a little bit about introducing some pauses for those who felt they were able to take those. But sometimes with movement, that can bring a little bit more ease to the pauses rather than a counting, holding breath. But we also know the somatic movement and movement generally in the body is really supportive with the breath and into the parasympathetic nervous system, this rest and digest and healing side. Breath holds, just working with our carbon dioxide oxygen ratios so that we know that actually breathing less is better for us. It always feels a bit wrong saying that, but we're looking to breathe less to support our overall health and well-being and for all the systems in the body to work really, really well. So introducing a short pause is going to slow our breath down, meaning we're breathing less, but also bringing that tolerance of carbon dioxide a little bit higher in the body. And we know we need the carbon dioxide to dilate the blood vessels for the oxygen to transfer into the blood and travel around the body.